Come on in, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Rebecca Ryan. I'm the Deputy Director of Public Services for the St. Paul Public Library. Thank you for joining us for Read Brave and a discussion about the power of books in approaching the topic of children's mental health. Read Brave is St. Paul Public Library's annual reading program for all ages. Each year we pick one theme and a series of books related to that theme, and invite community members to join us in reading bravely and having brave conversations. I want to thank the Friends of the St. Paul Public Library for their support of this program, and for funders Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, St. Paul Public Schools ARPA grant, and the St. Paul Saints. One housekeeping note for you. We are live streaming to Facebook right now, and there will be posted to YouTube later as a recording for people to watch. Now I'd like to hand it over to Councilmember Jane Prince for some remarks, and then to Kelsey Johnson-Kaiser, our library's Youth and Family Services Manager, to introduce our panelists. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I'm Jane Prince, and I am a member of the St. Paul City Council representing Ward 7. I see one of my constituents here, and probably others of you are, because the south half of the east side is the area that I represent. And I'm so proud to also serve on the library board, because St. Paul has simply the best libraries. And we work our library staff is among the very best in the world, and they work really hard to make this a wonderful place to be at the library. And they provide so many more things for you to do than people used to think of a library. It's not just getting books, it's using the computer, or it's getting job training, and it's finding mentors and playing with kitchen sets. And in any event, it's really an honor to be here today for this special discussion. Read Brave has been a really important part of our library offerings for about, I think, 5 or 6 years. And it has led to, as we talked about, people in our community being able to think about big thoughts and have meaningful discussions. The one today about children's mental health is something that means a great deal to me. Just recently, a member of my family has been struggling with mental health. And I realized that when I was growing up, we never talked about mental health. But what we realize now is mental health is health. That if you get the flu, or if, as I did earlier this winter, fall and break my arm, that I need to fix those things, because that's what's needed to be a healthy person. And similarly, mental health, even though you can't always see it, is part of being a healthy person. And I'm so glad that Read Brave is going to help us talk about it and help kids figure out that they're just like other kids, that nobody's alone, that we're a whole community of people that want to help all of us be healthy, and that means mental health. So with that, I will turn it over to this amazing panel. I met Bao and Keisha and Cori, and we know each other, so it's going to be very exciting for me to be able to listen to this important panel discussion. Thanks, everybody.
My name is Kelsey. Oh, can you hear me?
We can definitely hear you.
Okay. My name is Kelsey Johnson-Kaiser, and I'm the Youth and Family Services Manager for St. Paul Public Library. And I am happy to welcome you here today to this wonderful program with these 3 people who are absolute local gems who are here to talk with us. So I'll just give a little bit about Read Brave. Like Councilmember Prince said, this is actually the 10-year anniversary of Read Brave, so it's been around even longer than we think. And it's our citywide reading program that focuses on a theme of importance to our community. And so every year we curate a set of books for all ages and invite folks to read these books together and then have conversations about this issue. So this year we're talking about mental health, and it's a big topic right now for people of all ages. And as you know, adults in the room know, it's hard, and we grapple with mental health and figure out how to support ourselves. And when we're thinking about the kids in our communities, sometimes it feels like, I'm an adult, I don't know how to do this for myself. How am I supposed to do this for the kids around me and the kids in my life and the kids in our community? So today we're talking about using books as tools to open up these kinds of conversations with young people. And this could be whether they're in the youngest stages of life or dealing with pressures around school and friends and brain chemistry and hormones and everything that's happening in the world. This just big mix of stuff. So I'm going to start with reading a little bit about each of our panelists so that you can hear their backgrounds, and then we'll jump into some questions. So first we have Bao Phi, who is a spoken word artist, published poet, children's book author, and a Vietnamese American Minnesotan. His honors for picture books include the Caldecott Honor and Ezra Jack Keats Honor, the Asian Pacific American Librarians Association Award for Best Picture Book, the Minnesota Book Award for Picture Books, and other recognitions. Those are all a big deal. That's not written here, but like, that's a big deal. His last children's book is You Are Life. So let's please give Bao a nice round of applause. All right, next we have Keisha Mitchell. Keisha Mitchell is the Minnesota State Director of the Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated and the Program Manager for the African American Babies Coalition and Projects at the Wilder Foundation. Originally from Gary, Indiana, Keisha joined Wilder in September 2021 and currently resides in Apple Valley, Minnesota with her husband. She has 17 years of experience in the financial services industry and holds a Bachelor of Science from Purdue University. The Wilder Foundation African American Babies Coalition and Projects has a literacy library at the Child Development Center called RAW, Reading, Arithmetic, and Writing, where local authors come to perform book readings for the children. Keisha has testified for the Minnesota Senate and Minnesota House of Representatives on issues involving women's rights in the workplace. Keisha is an avid reader and has hosted several book drives through our sorority.
Yes. Thank you.
And finally, we have Cori Doerrfeld. Cori received a BA in Studio Art from St. Olaf College, as well as her post-baccalaureate in illustration from the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. After years of working with young children, she went on to help create over 35 books for kids with both local and national publishers. Her New York Times bestselling book, The Rabbit Listened, is currently available in 28 languages and the winner of numerous awards, including the Minnesota Book Award, the Anna Dewdney Read Together Award, and the Crystal Kite. Cori's most recent book, Beneath, not only celebrates her home state of Minnesota, but strives to continue her mission to start conversations and help people connect. She lives with her comic book artist husband, Tyler Page, their 2 children, and her studio companion, Jinx the dog. And I'll mention right before we get started that we have copies of The Rabbit Listened and My Footprints available today for you to take home for free. And Bao and Cori are going to be doing signings afterward. So you can look forward to that. All right, let's get to the good stuff. Tired of hearing me talking. All right, so I'm going to ask our panelists some questions and we're going to hear what their reflections are. So here's the first one. We often think about mental health as a big, ambiguous topic. It can feel intimidating to figure out where to start, and especially how to start talking with kids in ways that are age appropriate. So for each of you, how have your experiences with books and stories influenced the ways you think and talk about mental health?
Are we going to go down the line, or what should we do?
Whatever you want.
Is anybody just really ready?
I'm ready.
Start us off, Keisha.
So I actually really like that question. Being an auntie of 13 nieces and nephews, oh my God. And I have 3 great nieces and nephews. I am so into whatever they're going through. So a lot of times I find myself really listening to them and waiting for clues, waiting for an opening to have a conversation. Because to me, it's more important for them to be able to understand where their feelings are and the questions that they have. And let me tell you, they have a lot of questions. A lot of times, and also in my work, being a program manager, excuse me. We do a Healing Vessels conference where we talk to middle school and high school children. And a lot of times they're going through things that we have no idea that they're even being subjected to at this particular time in their life. So if you look for clues, if you look for openings, then you will be able to address them where they are. The one thing I will say is it's important to be honest. Children know when you are not being truthful with them all the way. So just have honest and open conversations and make sure that that they're age appropriate. So thank you.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I can speak next if you want. So I always try to think of a way to make my thoughts more clear to other people, right? That's what we're always trying to do. And so I kind of came up with this idea. So mental health, we're all, maybe imagine us all on our own island, and our mental health is the water around that island. And it can be clear, it can be murky, there can be dangers in that water, whether they're real or perceived. Is that kind of making sense? But I think a lot of times we feel very alone on that island, and the water around us is separating us from other people, and we might be afraid to face what's in that water. And what I love about stories are kind of like a letter. Maybe a letter finally lands on your island, and it's from somebody else, and it talks about their island, what's in their water, their thoughts, and suddenly you don't feel so alone. And also that letter doesn't ask anything other than you recognize that someone else is out there. It just forms that connection, and I love that stories, I feel that is their purpose, is to kind of reach out, form that connection, but it's something safe. When you think about children, like if you give them an age-appropriate story or tell them a story that they can relate to, that's something then that they can feel in control of. You're not asking them to suddenly take action or fix a problem. It's just kind of being like, hey, I'm acknowledging that you're out here and you have things you're worrying about. I've been there, and this is maybe something that'll help you feel less alone, and just kind of start that awareness that eventually they will be able to maybe build a bridge or go out on that water, or maybe realize it's not as scary as they're thinking, if all of that makes sense. But that's kind of how I thought about that.
Cool. Great answers. So first of all, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Kelsey. Yeah. Thank you all for being here in the snow. Yes. Those of you in Facebook and YouTube land, thank you for spending some time with us online. Gosh, how do I, well, a lot of it is becoming a father, quite honestly. And the shortest way to talk about it is that, you know, I had a lot of stereotypes about mental health and getting help for mental health, just because that was the era I was raised in. To give you an example, I didn't even know that I could claim being a survivor of war, even though I'm directly a refugee from Vietnam, until I was in my mid-30s, and let alone deconstruct what it meant and its effect on who I am, right? And I felt like once I had a child, I felt like my responsibility was to like normalize thinking about mental health and saying that it's okay to think about these things and explore these things, so that at least there isn't a stigma attached to it or a hesitation. And then in terms of like what to actually do about it, I mean, it's a constant learning experience, right? It's like you notice some things about your kid, you do your best, and sometimes it's wrong, and you get help from mental health professionals, and you try to put that into your practice, and you just kind of, it's like parenting, you're doing your best and making it up as you go, really.
Thank you. Something that I noticed about all three of your answers that I really appreciate is that we can't always feel like we're able to do something for ourselves, but when we look outside and we think about kids in our life, whether it's being a parent or kids in your community or being an aunt, there's sort of a different perspective of like, I want to do right by this other person that I care about, that I love, that I want to support. Thank you all for that. Yeah. So Bao and Cori, both of you as book creators, your books focus on a child experiencing a variety of different emotions. So how do you as an adult put yourself in the mindset of a kid who's having all these different feelings?
It's a great question. You want to go first, or? No.
Well, you could answer first this time.
So we're talking about this specific book, right?
Yep, but I know other books of yours have dealt with that too. So if you want to draw on other ones.
Well, I think for ease, let's just talk about this
Sure.
book. So My Footprints is about a little person, Asian American, who has 2 moms, and they get bullied at school. And the book is about them imagining themselves as all these different creatures and beasts to kind of deal with their hurt feelings of being bullied. That was very much what I did when I was a kid. I was a refugee from Vietnam, new to this country. There was a lot of discrimination and hatred and misunderstanding about Vietnamese refugees. I come from a big poor family, and so I was bullied a lot. And that was one of the reasons, that was one of the ways that I dealt with it, was science fiction and Dungeons and Dragons and Star Wars, these things that like took me out of that situation. So part of that is me, but also, it's the character is a little girl, Asian American girl. I'm a cis straight male, and so that is definitely not me. And so part of it was kind of, we as writers, we always practice empathy, right? We always try to imagine, as creators of art, hopefully, we're always, what would it be like if this person, even if that's not us, like what would it be like? And so I think it's like a combination of like both drawing on your personal experience and also asking, if you create a character, what would it be like for someone else who's not exactly the same as you, right? And partially it's also because of my kid, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Plus my kid was basically, this is my second children's book, and my kid was like, why isn't your picture, my first one, they were like, why isn't your picture book about me? And so,
Great question.
I didn't have a choice, really. I had to put myself in their shoes, and so I'll answer it that way.
Great, thanks, Val.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is an interesting question, because when I write, even though I write for kids, I don't necessarily stop and think about what a child's mindset is. I guess I still sometimes feel very much there. It more, I think, stems from the things I still see adults struggling with, things that weren't addressed when they were kids. Like, even adults have ongoing problems. Hopefully all you kids here know that. And the rabbit listen very much stemmed from that. I had 2 close friends who experienced very, very great loss in their life. And after that, they both would reach out to me and kind of express how no one in their life, all these adults around them, didn't know how to be there for them. They didn't know what to say. They felt just so overwhelmed. They already had their own grief, and then they just felt all these well-meaning adults in their life, trying to fix things, trying to make it better. And it just really made me feel that helplessness as well. Like, why is that so hard? Why don't we talk about grief very often? Why are we so bad at sometimes handling someone else's emotions? We get so uncomfortable, and we just want to kind of push it aside, or we want to make it, like I said, we kind of want to fix it. And so it did remind me of kind of a similar story of when I was a kid. I knew someone that experienced great loss as well, and kind of like I was saying, the adults in this child's life also wanted to make him better. They wanted to fix things, because nobody likes to see someone in pain. But what he told me, and I never forgot, what actually helped was they had a hobby farm. So a barn with these rabbits out in the barn, and he would kind of just go sit out there in the quiet and sit with these rabbits. And they didn't say, like, how are you feeling today? Or what are you thinking? Or let's explore this now, They were just there. And so I've never, ever forgotten that story. And just, I think he was around 8 at the time, just how important that stillness, that quiet, safe space was. And so it was kind of my wish to help the adults in my friends' lives know what to do, and remembering that moment in that child's life, that kind of, like you were saying about, like it's kind of your past experiences merging with your will to empathize and create something that helps people. So it's always kind of, those threads that go back and forth between who you are, what you're trying to do, and then parts from your past. And I mean, I still remember very much being when I felt scared as a kid, or I felt lonely. And I think we're all on different paths. And as adults, we're maybe a little bit farther along. And so if you can turn around and think like, what do I wish I had known further back on that path? Or like if someone had turned around and given me this tool or said that, sometimes that helps me remember what a child might be hoping for or wishing for, just as I was wishing or hoping for something for these adults. It's just like, what do I wish someone would have given me that just would have made the path a little bit easier to navigate or get through. So.
Yeah, and something that I think is really noteworthy in both of your responses, as you said, is those personal experiences that you're drawing on, and this idea that it's not like you're creating a character who's struggling and meanwhile your life has been perfect and no issues, right? Like this is a way for you to put out that lifeline of saying, we all have trouble with these things. These are things all of us grapple with, and so this is one of the ways you can help people feel less alone, is saying, here's a story that comes from my life. Yeah. So Keisha, you work a lot with kids and families.
That's correct.
So can you talk with us about how you use books to foster conversations that might feel uncomfortable or difficult?
So one of the things that at the African American Babies Coalition, we believe that representation matters. So when we're looking for books or things that we're bringing to our families in our community, we want to make sure that they feel some sort of bond or connection with that book or that experience, so that they'll be able, excuse me, so that they can be able to connect. Connection is really the key. When you're talking about someone's going through a certain time in their life, and I really love your story, when you're really looking for that connection and being able to take yourself out of a situation and sometimes deal with things or deal with your environment, what's going on at home, what's going on in school. There are so many things that our children are dealing with, and then coming home and actually have to deal with families and expectations and things like that. We want them to be able to have that connection. So when they come into our space, they're able to see people who look like them, people who may have certain experiences that they may have had an experience with, and we try to provide books or even readings. So we have a lot of book readings, so that they can see people that look like them.
Yeah. Thank you. So this next one is for all three of you. Different cultures have different ways of thinking and talking about mental health. So if you would each be willing to share, how does your own cultural background influence you, and how does it influence the ways you tell stories or how you work with families?
I can talk first if that's easy.
Yeah.
So the way I kind of thought about this question was, I grew up in the 80s and kind of early 90s, and I kept thinking of the words blurry and open. Like, what I mean by blurry is I feel like there was this emerging idea that children were people too, and maybe shouldn't just, be seen and not heard. I think, like we were talking earlier, there were shows like Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers that were really starting to acknowledge that, hey, you know what, kids are having big feelings and kids have a lot to process. Maybe we can kind of start acknowledging those things and working on those things. And I feel like even in my own home, my parents very much grew up where there were more rules and it was more strict, and I feel like they were trying to kind of blur those lines a little bit more in that, I mean, it was still, you know, there were rules, and it wasn't, I feel like, where it is now, where it's you know, but it's like they were willing to talk with me more about things than maybe their parents were willing to. And I was aware, they didn't maybe say mental health in the way we've been talking about it, but like I kind of knew why people in our family were this certain way, or they weren't afraid to kind of tell me age-appropriate stories from their past that might be affecting the way they were acting or the way they were feeling. I feel like there were little clues. It wasn't something I was totally kept in the dark about. And so I think that openness to knowing mental health, or just that everybody goes through something, their past is going to affect their future, did help me start to think about that in someone who makes stories. And then I also think the fact that my parents were very respectful, that I was kind of a nerdy, weird kid, and they didn't try to force any kind of idea of who I should be. I was allowed to very much like go into my own inner world and love the stories I loved as much as I did, and kind of foster my own ideas of what I wanted to be and what stories I wanted to tell. And so I feel very lucky and fortunate that now when I do look into storytelling or want to tell a story, I still feel that same openness that I can kind of pursue the stories that call to me, versus feeling like I have to be limited by a certain way of thinking or a certain set of rules, if that makes sense.
I'll answer that with kind of a curveball. Yeah. Because I feel like there are two ways to answer that question, and I already touched on one. So, you know, Vietnamese, refugee, 80s, poor family, mental health was not really, we were in survival mode. You know, no one talked about mental health. We should have, but we didn't. But another way to think about that question is, I'm raising a child in American culture, right? And thank you for what you said about representation, because that's something I think about a lot in many different ways. And so I believe that all of us who are people of color in this country are racialized very differently, right? And I feel like, and I'm not saying we have it better or worse than anyone, I feel like for Asian American people, our strange situation is that we are absolutely racialized, but there's no understanding or acknowledgement of how we are racialized, right? So for instance, it's like, oh, Asian people, you're not white, but you guys don't really suffer from racism or anything, right? And we absolutely do. And there's like no acknowledgement of that. And imagine what that is like for Asian American children, like mine, that they're racialized, but there's no discussion about it. There's no recognition. There's no tools given to Asian American kids about the racism they face. I certainly didn't get any when I was a kid. It's like, good luck, you know, like, so I had no understanding of it. And so I think about that. And then, you know, even the positives, right? Like, I can't tell you how many times I've been the one who's had to point out like a well-meaning mural or a statement that acknowledges everyone except Asian people. And like, I'm that guy, right? To point it out, like leftist, liberal, well-meaning people, they acknowledge everyone but us. And that my kid has to grow up like that as an Asian American. So they have this, they say they're not racialized, and yet they're not included, right? And they are never shown any Asian American people who have actually contributed to the culture of this country and this history, right? Like, imagine what that is for an Asian American kid. I don't have to, because I went through it. I don't have to imagine that. But I was hoping that by the time I had a kid, you know, that wouldn't be the case for them, but it absolutely is. And so that is something that's constantly on my mind. This is the culture that I'm raising an Asian American child in, and all of my work is an intervention in that culture.
Thank you for that. Yes. Thank you for sharing that perspective. I do not believe that I've ever heard that perspective before, so you have really enlightened me today, so I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
What I would say is I'm going to also answer your question just a tad bit differently. And I think about breaking generational curses. That's what I think about. When I think about, I can't speak for the whole African American community, but I can think of, I can speak for myself. And when I think of mental health in my family, it was something that wasn't spoke upon. I remember as a younger, I really wasn't an adult, but a child, having an anxiety attack. And I remember my father, who is an amazing man, was an amazing man, and I remember how he walked me through and he talked me down. And it was just, I will always remember that, because I never knew that anxiety was something that ran in my family, that other people might have suffered from it. And it was something after that, I never had an anxiety attack again, and we never talked about it. However, in this new generation, my nieces and my nephews, when they go through something, we talk about it. We're like, hey, you are not alone. Let's talk about this. What's going on? You know, and it's more open. It's not something that is shoved underneath like this rug. And a lot of times, children, since I have you guys out here, be kind to your parents, because
Please.
be kind to them, because the things that we went through, we couldn't talk about it. So we never got a chance to really heal from some of the things that we're still dealing with. You know, bullying was different. And I know that you guys have, I couldn't even imagine going through a generation of TikTok in middle school and in high school. That has to be hard. Right. But dealing with just things that are happening to you and not having an outlet, that's what your parents had to deal with.
Absolutely.
Be a little kind to them. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you all for sharing. I mean, that's really personal stuff. And I think something that I notice is that when I asked a question about different cultures have different ways of thinking, it's so clear that it's not like, well, here's the culture of Bao and of Keisha and of Cori. And so that's that. It's thinking about, like, what is your racial and cultural and ethnic identity? What about the time period of when you grew up? What's the culture specifically of your family unit? And so I think it's really interesting and powerful and important for us to remember that culture is like a million different little Venn diagrams for each of us. And that is all influencing the ways that we think. And then, like you said, Keisha, the ways that we grow up and sort of reflect on what are the things that we wish could have been different. Or Cori, like you said, what are the things that I wish like I would have known or had when I was younger? And so it is this sort of constant balance of how can I do better and be better? And where are the places where I don't know that I need to be better? And that's something that another generation will kind of come and think about is, here are the gaps that I had with my parents, and now this is what I'd like to do going forward. But I think it's so powerful, Keisha, what you were saying, how in your experience, it wasn't even something you got to talk about, right? Like it sounds like your dad was there for you when you were having this anxiety attack, but then you never talked afterwards about, what is this? Why might this happen? What if it happens again? So thank you all for sharing those really personal things. Appreciate it. So Bao and Cori, how do you hope that your books and your stories are impacting children and their caregivers now? Like, you know, every reader sort of brings something to the book, but what are the things that you're hoping get through or that folks take away when they're reading your stories?
You want me to go first?
Sure.
Just to touch on what I said just now is that, you know, we've always been a bookish family, and from jump, we wanted to read stories to our child so that stories that had all types of different characters and creators, Black, Native American, Arab, Latinx, queer families, right? People with disabilities, working class, poor, like the intent is so that your child learns, right? That the world is a big place full of a lot of different people. Yeah. You want to normalize that, right? You want to normalize that. It doesn't end there, but it's a beginning, right? And I hope that, and again, when we were reading books to our kid with this ideology of wanting them to know about many different peoples, it was very difficult to find Asian American picture books, especially Southeast Asian and like working class, that didn't deal with like either like Vietnamese traditional folklore or language, which totally fine, we need those things, but we also need the story of like, why are our people here and what is our struggle here? Like, what do we have to do with this this project called America, right? And not in like a weird settler colonialism way, but it's kind of like, like America is what it is today and we are a part of that, right? And so my hope is that, it goes back to Rudine Sim's essay, right? Mirrors and windows, right? You all know that argument that it's a brilliant essay. We'll send a link out to it, but so for kids who aren't Asian, it's a window, right? For kids who are Asian, it's a mirror, right? And that that's what you hope. I hope my books are, is that kids who aren't Asian, they can learn about someone that's not like them. And kids who are Asian are able to say, hey, look, there's someone who kind of looks like me.
Yeah.
And so that's my hope. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think for me, I worked in childcare for a very long time, and I have 2 kids, and as we've all talked about, even we could spend hours and hours with kids, it's still sometimes very difficult to know how to relate to them, how to communicate with them, how to bring up difficult subject matter. And so what I really hope is that my books can be that tool. Like if you literally don't know what else to do or say, like maybe just hand them the book. Or if you can, sit and read it with them. I think there's something very special, especially about picture books, because they are often meant to be shared. It's a shared experience. Usually, you're even, like I picture with my own kids, like sitting close in bed with them. Usually you're very close to the other person, and it kind of can create a moment that maybe opens the opportunity for them to bring up something that they were, like you were saying, kids will tell you. They'll tell you what, they'll give you clues if you give them that safe moment to send that clue out. And so I really hope with my books, especially like The Rabbit Listen, that's what happens, is people can find ways to have those quiet moments, that maybe those difficult topics or things that they have a hard time talking about can finally be addressed, even if it's just a beginning, because I feel like just the more you open that door, the easier it becomes each and every time. And then just a little bit of different angle of what you said, I do hope people see themselves, even my book's a little different in that it's not necessarily about any one identity. So I almost hope people see whatever they need to see in it, whether that's they experienced a loss and finally felt heard, or just the fact that the child has no gender in the book, or just something about it makes their wounds or their struggles finally feel like somebody heard them. I think that's just ultimately kind of what we're all saying up here, is every person wants to feel heard, they want to feel validated, and they want to know that they're not alone in their struggles. So.
Thank you. I think that's really powerful too, in combining what both of you said, where it's sort of spaces for mirrors and windows, and also in some ways a little bit of like open, undefined space to find your way into a book or into a story or into a character. And I think, Bao, you were talking about we need all kinds of different stories. And I think that's part of the beauty of, these books in particular, is that it does kind of show the breadth and width of all the different stories that we can have. One more question, and Keisha, this one is for you. Can you share your recommendations or insights for sharing stories that might grapple with harder topics? What has that looked like for you in your work for kids and families? And, do you have thoughts about how we can all do that more successfully?
So if you are an adult, the first thing that I recommend is that you actually read the books before you read them to your children. And if you know that you have a teenager, read the books that they're reading. Understand what is coming into your household. And it's not censorship. No, it's not. What it is, it's an opportunity for you to identify what your children are reading and being able to be in a position to answer any questions that they may have, or even understand, oh, hey, this might be a subject I don't want to have up into my household right now, and having that conversation with your child to say, hey, I know that you're 16, 17 years old, but this type of subject might not be a subject that you want to approach right now, and have those conversations. One thing that I know, talking to my nieces who are amazing, and they tell me the truth. When I say they give it to me, they give it to me. But they also understand, once you open up something, you can't bring that back. So if you are an adult reading things before they're actually reading it, understanding where they might have questions, it's always going to be a better outcome. The last thing that you want to do, and this is just my opinion, of course, is for a child to have access to something, and our imaginations are amazing places, and you never know what things or what thoughts might occur in a child's imagination, and you want to be able to have those conversations with your children. For us, in my family, our children, we have a village. That's what we call it. It's a village. All of us are working together in order to raise these children, and we want them to be the best version of themselves as possible. I don't have any expectation on my nieces except for going to Purdue, of course. That's our family school. Everybody, all the girls have went to Purdue, so except for one, and we're not going to talk about her. So I have no expectations on what they do in life. The only thing I want them to do is to know when they leave the household that they are loved and they are cared for. And whatever they have questions with, whatever they come into contact with, we can work through it and we can work with you. But how can you do that if you do not know what they are listening to, what they're reading? And again, this is not censorship. I'm not talking about censorship. What I'm talking about is being able to guide and protect your child the best possible.
Thank you. I kind of feel like if we could have summed up perfectly sort of some of the ideas behind Read Brave, that was it. So thank you for that. This idea that we can read these common stories and that, we can understand what are the things that you're being drawn to right now, and is that something you're interested in? Is that something that you're struggling with? Is that something we can talk about? So thank you so much for sharing that experience. Well, now we have kind of a special treat. We have Bao and Cori who are going to do a read aloud of each of their books. Something really special about having the creators here is that we can see sort of where they're bringing the content itself as they're reading it aloud. So we didn't necessarily talk about an order. I don't know if either of you feels like you want to go first, but whoever would like to go first, feel free.
I'll go.
Okay.
I'll just go.
Yeah.
Let's get it.
Thanks, Bao.
All right. My Footprints. This is my second book for kids, written by me, illustrated by Beja Tran, Vietnamese Polish artist. I'll try to be quick. I know we're running low on time. My Footprints. For Song, that's my kid. Twee sees those kids laughing at her again. She stomps away from school. The crisp white blanket of new snow cracks like eggshells beneath her feet. She looks behind her and sees her jagged footprints. Footprints, she says. My footprints. Twee stops. She looks up at the branches that reach like gloved fingers into the sky and sees a red cardinal. Where are your friends? Twee asks. Don't you fly south with the rest of the birds? The cardinal doesn't answer. Maybe he doesn't feel like talking right now. The little bird could fly away into the great pane of sky if it felt in danger. Twee points her feet in a V shape and hops once, lightly leaving shallow prints. She stops and draws a line through the middle of each V to make a third claw. Chirp, 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 Twee squeaks and flaps her arms. Let's all chirp together. Ready? Adults too. You're not getting out of this. Ready? Ready? Chirp, chirp, chirp. Thank you. You all are doing great. Almost home. The houses grow closer together. She can't read the bubbly words of graffiti on the train cars, but she thinks they are beautiful. She remembers how she saw a deer here once, how out of place it looked, but she knew its family must have been close. My footprints, Twee whispers. She tiptoes in small loops, dipping the tips of her boots deep into the snow like dainty hooves, wanting to feel peaceful, quiet, left alone. Mama Ngauk and Mama Arti smile at Twee when she gets home. Twee knows they are both tired from work, but their smiles feel like a heater that warms Twee's snow-wet toes. How was school, sweetie? Mama Ngauk asks. Twee doesn't want to answer that question. Instead, she asks, do snakes have butts? What? Mama Arti laughs. Twee smiles at first too, then frowns. She feels like a sudden snowstorm. Are you okay? Mama Ngauk asks. I don't want to talk about it, Twee shouts. As she shuffles away, leaving tracks like a snake slithering through the snow, she hears her mamas talking. Mama Arti's voice sounds frayed but warm, like Twee's favorite blanket. Twee runs a stick along the fence that's missing 2 teeth like she is. She makes more footprints, this time running faster so they are further apart. Quick, quick, quick. My footprints, Twee pants. She is a spotted leopard that can blend into its surroundings and disappear if it's threatened. Okay, we're all gonna meow together on 3, okay? 1, 2, 3, meow. Twee screeches, though that doesn't seem quite right. My footprints, Twee says, stomping deep into the snow. She looks behind her and sees a grizzly bear's paw prints. Strong and brave, a bear stands up for itself. Other animals are afraid to make fun of it. Roar, Twee growls, baring her teeth on 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3, roar! Great. Mama Arti and Mama Ngauk come out into the tiny snowy backyard polka dotted by Twee's footprints. What is the strongest animal? Twee asks. Mama Arti thinks, then says, there are a lot of different ways to be strong. An eagle is strong at flying in the sky. A dolphin is strong at swimming in the sea. And what do you think? Mama Ngauk asks Twee. Maybe a dragon, Twee says. She imagines one with googly eyes and a long body and whiskers fluttering like a flag among the clouds. But she can't imagine its footprints. How about an elephant? Mama Arti suggests. Twee puts both her feet together like an elephant hoof and stomps one big hole in the deep snow. She wishes she could make 4 all at once. I want to be the biggest and strongest and scariest monster, Twee says, so that if kids at my school make fun of me for having 2 moms, or tell me to go back to where I come from, or call me names, or bother me because I'm a girl, I can make them stop. Can we play with you? Asks Mama Ngauk. Yes, Twee says. Let's make footprints. Mama Ngauk says, I wonder what creature we can pretend to be together because we're stronger together. What's your favorite? Twee asks her. The phoenix, Mama Ngauk says. Twee sees their shadows curl into long blue feathers. Rise from the ashes, she shouts, remembering a story about the powerful creature. The 3 of them hold hands with Twee in the middle, then spread her arms wide so that together their shadows form a great wingspan. And what's your favorite, Mama? Twee asked Mama Arti. Do you remember the painting I showed you once of the Saraba? Mama Artie asks. Part lion, part bird, Twee says. The three of them get in line, hands on hips, and they become the fearless many-legged creature. An unexpected combination of beautiful things. What's your favorite, Mama Artie asked Twee. I want to make one up, Twee says. It can fly and swim and run, and it always is kind to everyone else, and it only eats birthday cake. What does it look like? Mama Nauk asks. It has black hair and black eyes. It is both a boy and a girl, and its skin keeps changing color from black to light brown to lighter and back to black. Not to hide, but because it always wants to be different shades of pretty, and it never hurts or makes fun of anyone. That sounds like my new favorite creature, Mama Artie says. What's its name? Its name is Snake Butt, Twee says. But then she changes her mind. No, it's Artie Twee Naukosaurus. As the three of them hold hands, they make footprints together. The footprints of the rare and beautiful and strong and brave and quick and quiet Artie Naukosaurus in the fine cold snow. Twee starts to chant, our footprints, our footprints. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Val.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Now we'll hear the rabbit listen from Cori.
And my book is short, so I'll read it and then we'll be done. Okay. The Rabbit Listened, written and illustrated by me, Cori Doerrfeld. And here we see Taylor. And Taylor is pushing a box. One day, Taylor decided to build something new, something special. Something amazing! Taylor was so proud. But then, out of nowhere, things came crashing down. How does Taylor feel now? Not good. No. The chicken was the first to notice. Cluck, cluck, cluck. What a shame. I'm so sorry this happened. Let's talk about it. Cluck, cluck, cluck. Quack, quack, quack. But Taylor didn't feel like talking, so the chicken left. Quack, 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 quack. Next came the bear. Grrr! How horrible! I bet you feel so angry. Let's shout about it. Grrr! But Taylor didn't feel like shouting, so the bear left. The elephant knew just what to do. Trumpada, I can fix this. We just need to remember exactly the way things were. But Taylor didn't feel like remembering, so the elephant also left. It's a new book. Here we go. One by one they came. The hyena, let's laugh about it. The ostrich, gulp, let's hide and pretend nothing happened. The kangaroo, tisk tisk, what a mess. let's throw it all away. And the snake, shh, let's go knock down someone else's. But Taylor didn't feel like doing anything with anybody. So eventually they all left until Taylor was alone. How does Taylor still feel? Pretty sad. Whew. In the quiet, Taylor didn't even notice the rabbit, but it moved closer and closer until Taylor could feel its warm body. Together, they sat in silence until Taylor said, "Please stay with me." The rabbit listened. The rabbit listened as Taylor talked. The rabbit listened as Taylor shouted. The rabbit listened as Taylor remembered and laughed. The rabbit listened to Taylor's plans to hide, to throw everything away, to ruin things for someone else. Through it all, the rabbit never left. And when the time was right, the rabbit listened to Taylor's plan to build again. "I can't wait," Taylor said. "It's going to be amazing." And how does Taylor finally feel? Happy. And Taylor's probably going to make a bigger and better tower. Yeah? Yeah. That's the end.
All right, well, thank you so much to our three panelists for being here today and for sharing and for all the wonderful work that you do with kids and families, with readers, and for being here and sharing all of this with us today. Let's give them one more round of applause. Thank all of you for being here. We really appreciate it. We love having you here at the library. We are now going to have a little time for Bao and Cori to sign copies of their books. So if you're interested in having them sign a copy, they're going to be at the tables right back here. We have free copies to give away, so if you don't have one, that's okay. We have one for you. And hope you all have a really great rest of your day. Thanks again for coming.